Hello students, in this video we're going to learn about how to space your lights, your luminaires in your room and give it an even level of lighting. Here we go. The spacing criterion, or SC, is a method for correctly or evenly spacing your luminaires in a room that specifically requires even lighting, which many of them do, for example, a big open office area. The spacing criterion is given in two directions, parallel to the length of the luminaire, kind of along the length of the luminaire, or perpendicular to the length of the luminaire, which is also called across. And in this video and on these slides, I've designated these with the red and the blue arrows. So here's an example from your book that we are going to follow along with, and it's got this luminaire here. Here's kind of an illustration of it, and here is a picture of the luminaire as installed in what looks like a conference room. So you can see that the parallel direction is this one that goes along the longer direction of the luminaire. And in the photo of it, it's this direction right here. This is the parallel direction. Perpendicular is the across direction, and it goes along the short way of the luminaire, short direction. And here it is in the photo. That's the perpendicular or across direction. Now notice in both these pictures, in the photo and the illustration, I have made these crossed right smack in the center of the luminaire. So here's right here and right here. That's because later, and later on in this video, you're going to use a center to center measurement. So I'm kind of indicating where that center is that we're talking about. You can find the spacing criteria in the photometric data on your spec sheets. And for your textbook example, here it is right here. The spacing criteria along is 1.1 and across is 1.3. This is a ratio, so there's no units to this. It's just a number. There's one more piece that we need to talk about before we space our luminaires in a room, and that's the mounting height. Now, normally, when we talk about mounting height, it is going to be the distance from the floor to the bottom of the luminaire. When we're specifically talking about the spacing criteria and the spacing calculations, there's a different definition of mounting height, and that is from the work surface to the bottom of the luminaire, right? Not to the floor. So here's the illustration from your textbook. Here is the floor. Here is the work surface, kind of a desk height right here. Here's the height of the luminaire, and here is the ceiling height. So typically, for example, if you are telling a contractor how high to install your luminaire, you would give them the height off of the floor. So that would be from the floor to the bottom of the fixture. For this specific use and this specific calculation, you need the distance from the work surface. You need the distance from the work surface to the bottom of the luminaire. For this textbook example that we're going through, that distance is 7 feet 6 inches, or 7.5 feet. Okay, so we know our spacing criteria and we know our mounting height. Now we can calculate our spacing intervals. Spacing intervals are the center to center distance between your fixtures. They can be, and often are, different in the parallel or along direction and the perpendicular across direction, right? Because your fixture may throw light differently. It may have different distribution in those two directions. The formula is pretty easy. It's just a simple multiplication. So your spacing intervals are equal to your spacing criteria times your mounting height, in feet, by the way. For the textbook example, your parallel or along direction. Your spacing intervals are going to be, the spacing criteria was 1.1, your mounting height was 7.5 feet, and so you multiply those and you get your spacing interval of 8.25 feet. Now you can use 8.25 feet, or you can round it and use an 8-foot spacing. Let's try it in the perpendicular direction next. In the perpendicular direction, the spacing criteria is 1.3. The mounting height is the same. It's 7.5 or 7.5 feet. So we're right here. Multiply those two together and you've got a spacing interval of 9.75 feet. You can use that number, or you can round it and use a 10-foot spacing. Okay. In this example, our specific luminaire has different distribution of light in the parallel and perpendicular directions, and that gives us a different spacing criteria number in those two directions, which we saw on the spec sheet, in the data that was given on the spec sheet. Therefore, we have to do this spacing interval calculation twice. Do it once in the parallel direction, once in the perpendicular direction, and you're going to get two different answers. So what does that look like in a room? We know that we've got an 8-foot spacing in the along or parallel direction. We've got a 10-foot spacing in the across or perpendicular direction. Again, I'm using the red versus blue arrow to show the along versus across. So I drew up a little plan for you here, and you can see these little rectangular lights. We're looking at a plan view, so you're looking down, or actually you're probably looking up in the reflected ceiling view. And so we've got an 8-foot spacing between the lights, center to center, remember, in the along or parallel direction, okay, because this is the length of the luminaire. We've got a 10-foot spacing in the across or perpendicular direction. All right, and remember that is from center to center, not from edge to edge. It's from center to center. There's one more piece to this, and that is how far away you want to space your luminaires away from a wall. Don't put your luminaires too close to a wall. What you'll get is a hot spot that you don't want, a glare of reflection, and it won't look right in your room. So here's an example right here. On the left, we have it looks like some recessed lights that are properly spaced. You can see this one right here, and they're giving even light across the room. On the right hand, we've got the same fixtures, but they're spaced differently, and one of them is too close to the wall. If you look at that, it looks like it's only 4 to 6 inches away from the wall. It's giving a big glare on that wall. It's distracting, and that's not what you're aiming for with this particular lighting design. So space it a little bit further away from the wall. I also found this picture online of a recessed light that is too close to a kitchen cabinet. So be aware of things that are mounted on the wall. This might have been the right spacing without the cabinets, perhaps, or maybe it was even too close right then. But as you can see in this picture, it is that recessed light is only a couple of inches away from that cabinet. It's giving a big glare or reflected hot spot right there. So the rule is that you want to use half of the distance that you just calculated, the center to center distance. For our example, what does that look like? In the along direction or the parallel direction, we calculated a 8-foot center to center distance. That means you want your fixture at least 4 feet away from the walls in the along direction, and that's shown here with this red arrow. In the across direction or perpendicular direction, we calculated a 10-foot center to center spacing. Therefore, half of that, we would like our fixture to be spaced 5 feet from the walls in the, the across direction, the perpendicular direction shown with the blue arrows. All right, everyone, we're getting into a little bit of math here. This was an easy calculation, but it's very, very powerful because it helps you locate your luminaires in your room. Thanks.